Hi, I'm Thom Ruhe of the Kauffman Foundation, and welcome to Top of Mind, a weekly program where I share with you news from the world of entrepreneurship, information for founders, and anything else that comes top of mind. This week, we're going to ask some age-old questions. In particular, entrepreneurs, are they born or are they made? We'll have a lively conversation about that. We're also looking at what it's going to take to build entrepreneurial communities from the ground up. We're going to key in on an exciting new book coming out by Brad Feld, which a few of you probably know, has a thing or two to say about that in this space. And then later we'll be joined by Nate Olson, who's running an exciting new program here at the Foundation that's hopefully helping build and foster an entrepreneurial community from the bottom up here in Kansas City called 1 Million Cups. This is Top of Mind. So, entrepreneurs, born or made? It's a controversial question. You know, in a lot of sectors, the question always is like, do I need to have an education? Is it essential for me? Can I succeed without a bachelor's or a master's degree in a particular area? Can I bravely go out and forge that new enterprise without, the benefit of a college education? Well, certainly there's been a few successful folks that have done that. Zuckerberg, Gates, Steve Jobs come to mind. There's a growing discourse, argument, if you will, on how necessary that is. And there have been some pretty successful entrepreneurs that have, put their money into this. They've put their money where their mouth is. In particular, a successful entrepreneur by the name of Peter Thiel. You may know him from PayPal fame. He was an early investor in the aforementioned Facebook or Mark Zuckerberg. He's taking this notion that you really don't need to go to college to be successful to the extreme of offering a $100,000 fellowship program to leave school for promising students to actually drop out from college and go off and start a company. And you got to kind of give it to him with his success and track record. Maybe he's onto something there. So if you're going to consider, foregoing college for something like the Thiel program, the Thiel Fellowship, the interesting thing is there's a couple new options that have been coming out recently. There's one in particular here, the E-Institute, an apprenticeship program designed to immerse aspiring professionals in the local startup scene without a college degree. That's following a little bit more of a typical internship opportunity or model, but surrounding yourself with, kind of the startup entrepreneurial culture and people in it. There's more and more of these types of programs coming out there, and I think as academia and higher ed struggle with, a world that's being changed by disruptive technology, there are things and sources of courses right now that are invaluable in helping educate an entrepreneur along the line that you don't have to enroll in any university to get. I think we have not even come close to hearing the end of this debate for some time to come. Now, the irony here is that for some entrepreneurs who forego the college, a lot of them who go on and have wild success come back and find themselves in a college classroom environment. And what I mean by that is they become successful in their endeavor. And they oftentimes get asked to come in and provide lecture and share their experiences, with classroom programs at various colleges on how their life journey towards entrepreneurship happened. Coming to the top of my mind here is one of our local Kansas City folks, a fellow associate here at the Foundation. Nate Jones was working right here in one of our affiliate programs called Fast Track. And, Nate came to me, he'd been in Fast Track for maybe a year or so, and it's one of our oldest, most successful curriculum programs that actually provide hands-on training, the mechanic type training that you need to start a company. And he came to me one day and he was like, I can't be around this without trying it. And he pitched me the idea for a company that became what is now known as Ag Local. And Nate didn't have the benefit of going on and getting a college degree after graduating from high school, but he connected with an idea. He understood from his experience here at the Foundation, what successful entrepreneurs do, And he went off in, I mean, in a dedicated way that is, it's so special. I hope to have him here on the couch with me in a future episode of Top of Mind, because he really made a commitment. And fast forward, I don't think it's even been 6 months. He's raised millions of dollars. They've launched a great company. The product's coming out in a pretty big beta here at the end of the year. And he's been so successful and so recognized for this activity, he's now ironically coming back and giving lectures at universities. That's really the kind of fortuitous circle that, you know, sometimes these entrepreneurs follow. So kind of getting back to the question of teaching entrepreneurship or not, you know, and it's tangential to the whole born or bred to be an entrepreneur. You know, when I'm asked this question, and usually it's asked in the context of a very emotional opinion that the person asking already has, I try to be a little more agnostic about the answer. There are certainly conditions that lend yourself, you know, in the way you're raised, your risk aversion or, you know, latitude for taking risk that will impact the answer to that question. From a teaching it standpoint, you know, what I say to you is entrepreneurship is a contact sport. To truly learn it, you have to engage in it. You know, and the example I use in that is, if Tiger Woods were to write a book today on how to golf, and if I were to give you that book, you could read that book, you would understand mechanics of golf, but until you put a golf club in your hand and go out and take your strokes on the course, you're not going to be a great golfer. Now, the other side of that equation is a guy like Tiger Woods, who's arguably one of the world's best golfers, he still practices. He still has a coach and people that work on his game. So I don't think the answer is black or white, that you can or you can't, you're born or you're not. I think it's a question of aptitude. Where are you on a sliding scale from having the personality predisposition to follow entrepreneurship? And I believe, yes, there are definitely things you can do to educate yourself, to understand, you know, the risks that you're taking, to understand how to go to market, how, you know, how you produce a minimally viable product, how do you get validation, how do you understand idea recognition. The interesting thing that has changed over the years is that is no longer the exclusive purview of higher ed. You can get that kind of feedback in other sources, in other places. So now, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur with a degree or a dropout, it doesn't really matter. There is a common need for many that they pursue, and that's the need for capital, cash. And if you're currently residing in Minnesota, and I'm sure I offended many Minnesotans with my poor attempt at an accent, the funding might become a little easier in the future. So recently, the House Tax Committee is debating a bill that would grant $32 million in investment tax credits over 3 years to angel investors who fund, you know, high-tech startups, high-growth startups. What that means in lay terms is, and it's varying by states across the country. States are debating this policy everywhere because, frankly, the data is a little murky on whether there's a causal relationship or not. But the gist of it is this. If you, as an angel investor, are willing to make an investment in a particular startup company, and states vary on the criteria of what type of company. It's generally speaking, there is some specificity as to the type of company you get a tax credit for. But if you invest in one of this, you could actually get a break on your state income taxes. So the notion there is, if I take this chance, I invest, let's say, $100,000 in a company, that $100,000 is really discounted because I will have a reduction on my state income tax burden by some percentage. So that $100,000 investment really might only cost me $90,000. So there's a value there. And the assumption that's, you know, goes along with the debate over to offer it or not is, well, does that incentive, is that sufficient to spur more investment activity? You know, and this has really become more of a controversial type of policy being debated because most states are not, you know, hemorrhaging cash. You know, there's lots of budget shortfalls, and any type of investment tax credit is ostensibly, you know, a tax rebate, which is taking, again, money out of the tax coffer. So in case you were wondering why this is disputed, it's not just an abstract whether it's a good or bad thing, but there is cause, you know, with reducing the tax income. Now, proponents that support it say that's what's given away in a tax credit is more than made up for in the good and the tax base that comes out of the startup that gets funded. So that's the context of the debate. And it really starts becoming a battle, a border war battle. You'll find oftentimes, and that's the case here in Minnesota, they're neighbors there with Wisconsin. And, the question is, well, who's doing it better? And will a tax incentive on one side of a state line, draw people over the borders? It becomes kind of a rating issue. And so it's a pretty complicated dynamic, but it's one that, at least anecdotally, we see can spur some early stage investing to happen that might not otherwise. So while Minnesotans debate the tax credit, we'll continue the discussion about how to spur these entrepreneurial communities, and we're going to take it actually a little step smaller from the state level to now cities. October 9th, an exciting book is dropping from Brad Feld, who many viewers of Top of Mind might know as the brains behind Techstars and his accelerator activities in Colorado, Boulder specifically. His book goes out and really lays out the compelling case that cities that enjoy entrepreneurial culture and an entrepreneurial community that's very dynamic engine of economic activity, they really have a couple basic ingredients that are happening on them. I had the chance just a couple weeks ago to talk to Brad and be with him in Colorado for an innovation summit that the governor was hosting there. And I got to hear him actually explain the premises of the book. The first thing he says in the ecosystem, there's really like four themes or components that he's addressing. Is the first one, and he's very, very emphatic about this, is there are two support groups to these entrepreneurial communities. You have leaders and feeders. And what he means by that is this. Leaders are the entrepreneurs. When you start talking at the community level, well, it actually rolls all the way up even into the state and federal level, but when you start talking about generally supporting entrepreneurship, you'll get a lot of well-intended people who want to throw their hat in the ring and they want to support it. Brad's premise is that's all well and good, that's all well-intended, but that's more of a support role. The people that truly have to lead, entrepreneurial ecosystems have to be entrepreneurs. And he's very, very clear on that point. He's got, zero tolerance for varying on that. Leaders and feeders, and leaders are the actual entrepreneurs. The feeders are all the support system around that, from the universities to the chambers to the ECDev groups. They have to have and understand their role, and they have to exist in the community. You need critical mass around that and kind of a shared values for the community that you want to drive towards that outcome. But they are in that category. They need to understand their role. Both roles need to understand that this is a long-term commitment. That's the next point that he makes. This isn't a short-term play. You can't go into it with the expectation that, we're going to do this for 12 months and we're going to look around and say, wow, now we have this beautiful thing and we can turn our time, treasure, and talent to the next thing. That's not how it's going to happen. In the book, he opines that, these great cities that have evolved in these areas around the country that have evolved as such have done so, again, by taking that long view. So everybody that wants to thread into this game has to understand, that's the way it's going to be done. It's going to be long view. The next thing is you have to be inclusive of everyone who wants to participate in it. I know, from time to time, this can be, if I'm just being honest here, it can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Because again, supporting entrepreneurship is one of those causes that a lot of people can find a personal affinity for, but it's a little hard sometimes understanding the fit. And, if you're one of those organizations like we are here at the Kauffman Foundation, you try to organize like-minded organizations and groups and efforts, let's try to find where we can have scale, and accommodating everybody can be a challenge sometimes. Well, Brad really says that you need to accommodate, because if you start picking and choosing, you're going to lose. You just don't have the ability. You're not smart enough as a community to know who's going to succeed or fail on that. So his point is, be inclusive. You have to do that. And then finally, to kind of round out the thesis of the book, he's really understanding that there has to be continual activities. There's got to be churn. We call it here collision of networks, as others do. There's wonderful things that you just cannot predict, you can't force, you can't anticipate. So you have to set the circumstances, the conditions for these, unintended actions to come out, these collision of networks to happen, because you never know when 2 points connect, to create something of greater value than the two of them independently. And that's one of the beautiful upsides of entrepreneurship, generally. So, look for it to drop. It's really going to be a blueprint for cities, and that's my segue, my transition to a little thing that we're doing to help our efforts here in Kansas City to build that startup culture. It's a program that we're calling 1 Million Cups. It's new to us here at the foundation. We have a very bright young man that's running that program for us by the name of Nate Olson, and it's my pleasure to ask Nate to join me here on the couch to talk about 1 Million Cups. So I'm joined here on the couch with Nate Olson. Nate has been at the foundation now. How long has it been?
March 1st.
So since March 1st?
Since March 1st.
Okay. So we haven't even celebrated your 1-year anniversary yet. The reason I'm confused is because you've already had such a big impact here at the foundation. 1 Million Cups, as I said in the intro, great new program that started very organically. And, I'm pleased to have you here so that you can share with the viewers of Top of Mind, how it is we came to launch this thing and where it's gone since launching it. And if you could finish on, what goals and aspirations do we have for it going forward?
Sure. Well, when I was, assigned to the Kansas City portfolio, I was trying to understand what are the gaps that Kansas City's entrepreneurs are facing. And so spent a lot of time out in the community just trying to learn what programs are offered to entrepreneurs and what's missing. And it seemed like there was a lack of consistent programming, something happening on a weekly basis for entrepreneurs, and there's nothing to really showcase the really neat startups in Kansas City. So when I started, I knew a handful of startups, but I was trying to learn what did the entire community look like, and how could we build that community up and bring the entrepreneurs together to learn from one another. So we started, I think, first week of April, and we said we were going to do 2 startups per week, so high potential startups less than 2 years old from the Kansas City region. We were going to give them a 6-minute presentation, 20 minutes of Q&A in front of an audience. In the first week, I think we had 15 people come, and I think I had to beg them all.
And those were associates of the foundation, right?
Absolutely.
So just when the reason I'm pointing that out is it wasn't even community based yet. It was kind of inward facing. We were trying to educate our associates on startup culture.
Absolutely, and I think we intended to open it up to the community, but you kind of got to test it before you. You got to test it before you open it up, and so we just kind of kept it internally, and we had 15 people show up, and the next week it was interesting because the entrepreneurs who presented the first week started coming back for the second group of entrepreneurs, and so we were like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then,
why did they tell you they were? And I know we've got a following now.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the general messaging? Why are they coming repeatedly?
There's so much to learn from other entrepreneurs. I mean, I think of it as like a book. And if I'm a first-time entrepreneur, I may be in chapter 1 or 2 of my story. But when I learn from another entrepreneur, maybe a serial entrepreneur who's on their 3rd startup, they're on the 10th chapter of their book. And so it's sort of, I like to think that in this collaborative space, we can learn from one another. And I think that's why entrepreneurs started coming back.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. So I'm sorry, I kind of pulled you ahead. Why don't you take us back now in the sequences? And I think it'd be interesting to our viewers to understand how this evolved.
Right. So, one of the greatest challenges that I had was like, how do I find the startups? And that was the fun part. I still think it's the fun part. It's the discovery part. And so basically I went into a discovery phase. I was out every night after work trying to find entrepreneurs, and talking to the community that already existed. And who's working on what project, who launched out of a startup weekend or a hackathon, or who's forming a new startup. And we started filling the pipeline up. So we got probably 2 months out and realized that all the entrepreneurs had come back. We were kind of building a unique entrepreneurial community where entrepreneurs could talk honestly about where their business is at, where they're trying to go, and what challenges they're facing, and then learn from one another. And then it finally got to a point where maybe around 45, 50 people were coming each Wednesday, that we were like, we gotta turn this over to the community and open it up and involve everybody. And funny story, Cameron Cushman, who we share the Kansas City portfolio, one week he's like, there's so many people coming. He's like, why are there so many people just pouring in? And what he didn't know was on the Monday of every week, I would send out a secret email to all the entrepreneurs who had presented, and I said, all right, this week it's Bring a Friend Week.
Oh, so then we started getting that growth that we were scratching our head about.
Yeah, and I told them probably, midsummer, I was like, I was inviting people to come, and they wanted to come. People were emailing me.
Oh,
and
sure. I mean, misery loves company, and entrepreneurs are, in great company there.
Yep. And so, let's see. So I guess we're approaching the fall now. We're in the fall season, and we've had 47 companies come through. Have not missed 1 week yet, except for 4th of July, but national holiday. But some of the entrepreneurs wanted to meet on the 4th of July, which was funny.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the least, right? They don't take a holiday.
They don't take a holiday.
You're building a company.
Yeah. We've maxed out now at 110 people coming, and you mentioned it, it's the unlikely collisions. When you have 110 people meeting in a space, odds are you're going to meet somebody new, you're going to make a meaningful connection. And I think about, as long as everybody walks away feeling like they learned something, that they were heard and they were understood, and that they made a meaningful connection, that's really what 1 Million Cups is about. And you never know what that connection is going to turn into.
Well, obviously I'm a big fan and in agreement of that. So, why don't you share, if you could, for the viewers, meaningful connections. Now we want to have meaningful impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've used, as was the intent for Mr. Kauffman, he was very keen, and he gave us a good record of his donor's intent to use Kansas City as a test bed. We should try things here and prove that they can work, and then share them more broadly. In line with Mr. K's intent, where do you think we're going to be able to go with this?
Yeah, I think, the amazing thing about 1 Million Cups is it's such a simple program to organize and execute. So unlike all the other programs that do great work nationally, this is a very easy program that you can launch a startup community wherever you are. And I think, you were talking about Brad Feld's book, Startup Communities, that's coming out. Brad argues that every town, every community, every city was once a startup. So inherently, the town has everything you need. It has the basics to start a startup community. And that's really, the vision. So goals for the end of the year. I'd like to launch in 2 more cities, Omaha and Des Moines, during Global Entrepreneurship Week. If we can do that, I think we're on the right track. And then it's my hope that we can launch in 15 plus cities in 2013.
So you've explained, how we're going to roll this out in the community, but now that we're going to take it even broader around the country and expanding in the areas you mentioned, what do you see the benefit of us doing that?
Well, I think it's really interesting when you start looking at building, let's say, 20 plus startup communities that weren't formally organized yet across the country. And, the question begs, we're not there yet, but how can we start cross-pollinating Kansas City's 1 Million Cups entrepreneurship community with Des Moines and Omaha's and Lawrence's and Topeka and, so on and so forth. So when we think about, the benefits, if I'm an entrepreneur in Kansas City, I'm looking to grow my business into Omaha. I already have a startup community and a relationship through 1 Million Cups that can help me accelerate into that market. So I think there's a lot of benefits here that we're going to see, cross-pollination between communities. And, I'd like to see a year from now a 1 Million Cup summit of all the organizers and biggest participators. I think that's really where we're heading, and it's going to be a much larger community.
That sounds very ambitious and very worthy for us to pursue. That sounds like a great idea. Well, Nate, thanks again. Do you want to do a shout out on the URL for the site?
I want to shout out to my mom. Mom, I love you. And yes, please go to 1millioncups.com. It's where you can find all of our archived presentations of all of our entrepreneurs, their company profiles. And what's really great about 1millioncups.com is on the profile, the entrepreneurs tell you about their business, who they are, what they're asking from the community in terms of support, and what they're willing to give back. And that's the really unique part.
Well, you heard it here first. We're taking it on the road. Obviously, the foundation will put some thought around this to make it as easy as possible for communities around the country. I got to just take a moment to recognize your incredible work here and thank you for it. I've been here over 5 years now, and this is one of those programs that I've been the most excited about in a long time. So I think it's the simplicity, the ability to roll it out, and just the impact that you can have on it for, not a whole lot of effort or expense. So, Nate, thank you, and big shout out plug. Come to Kansas City, you get one of these, although a smaller scale of it. And thanks for joining me here on the couch for Top of Mind.